Those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeff Kachko. I'm from Swearsville, Pennsylvania, and I dug at the Hawley factory site for about 25 years, starting back in the 80s. And if you're wondering, how the heck did I come across it? I've got to give credit where credit is due. Ray Klingensmith found it first, and I stumbled on it after the fact. What had happened was, those of you that know me know that I'm a real big Erie Railroad fan. And I just happened to be walking up the Honesdale branch of the Erie, and I was working my way up to Hawley to Honesdale. And at one point, I get to an area where there's foundations. I thought, all right, I'll look around here, just see if there's anything, and I kind of dismissed it. So let me show you a couple pictures here. Let's move on, Gus. First, we're going to show you our inventor. That's Morton Harlow. This research was originally done by Ray Klingensmith, and he received this from one of Morton's granddaughters. Next one. All right, here's the foundation. If you look closely, you can see there's glass in the foundation. That piece of glass has the word PA on it. At the time, I didn't make the connection. But on my very next trip up there, I'm walking a little further, and there's a hole dug in the middle of the property, and there's a bunch of beehives, maybe 20, 30 beehives. Well, next door to this place was a young man by the name of Floyd, probably 10, 12 years old. And he was digging in the middle of where Ray had dumped all the glass he had found from, I don't know, the spring before. And I asked the little guy, I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, and he was a little monotone, and he kind of said, "Well, I'm just looking for insulators. There are these two guys digging here." And this is the way he talked, with a little drawl. And he goes, "Yeah, the one guy's kind of tall. He's from Ohio. And the other guy had a real foggy voice." And I knew exactly who he was talking about. It was Butch Kirk from up in New York. Well, what had happened was Ray was in there, and he had dug a big section of this. And I'm looking around, and I go, what in the heck is going on here? There was all these sticks pounded into the ground, probably about broomstick handle sized, and they're sticking out of the ground about an inch or two. And it was a huge area that was basically marked off by these things. And as Floydie was talking to me, I'm looking at this, and he goes, "Yeah, when those boys were through digging, they dumped all the insulators in the middle, so I just thought I'd dig myself a couple." And that's all I needed to hear. So instead of me having to go through the trouble of going to the courthouse, finding out where this factory was, thank you, Ray, Floydie showed me where it was. So as I'm talking to this little boy, a woman and her daughter come walking down, and the younger girl goes, "You know, this is private property here." I said, "Yeah, I know." She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Is this where the insulator factory was?" "Yeah, but you can't be here." I said, "Well, do you own it?" And she goes, "Nope." I said, "Well, who does?" And she goes, "Well, it's so-and-so, and they live in this greenhouse up the road, but thank you very much." So I jump in the car, and I go find this greenhouse a few miles away. I knock on the door. Woman answers the door. She says to me, "What do you want?" She's probably in her late 40s, early 50s. I said, "I understand you own the property where the glass factory was down in town." She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I would like to know if I can dig there." She goes, "Nope, you got to talk to the man of the house." I said, "Well, is he home?" She goes, "Nope, you'll have to come back." I said, "All right." Next day off, I go there, knock on the door. I get the same spiel. And I said, "Well, listen, when's he going to be home?" She said, "Well, he works such and such a day up at one of the Cove Haven resorts. He's a maintenance man there. Why don't you come back on such and such a day?" I go back that next day, so now we're talking a couple weeks down the road, and I say, "Would you mind if I dig on your property?" And he's sitting in the back garage talking to his neighbor. And he turns around and looks at me and goes, "Boy, those things must be worth money. You're not the only guy that's been here looking to dig." And I said, "Well, I'm local. I'd really appreciate the opportunity." And he said, "Listen, the last guys that were here, I wasn't real happy about how they left my property." And he said, "But I tell you what, I'll give you a chance. When you come down here, I want you to dig, but call me first. I'll be there to check on you. When you're done for the day, the property better look like it did when you got here." I said, "No problem." So I came to find out later that what had happened was that they hadn't finished filling in where they were working, Butch and Ray. They had every intention of doing so, but I guess it wasn't to the owner's timeline. He didn't throw them out, but he just let them know, he was not pleased. So anyway, next day off comes by. And even though I didn't make the connection with that at first, this is where that factory was. They made the concrete with the sand that was right there, and that broken insulator piece was in there all along. So anybody who had gone through there could have known that that was where it was. So I go there my very next day off. I must have been quite a sight because I had this big, heavy army jacket on, army hat, and it was raining. So I'm out there in the mud. Let's take a look at the property at this point. Next one, that's the close-up of that piece. There is the property. There's obviously a spur off this railroad to service this plant. But this is what it looked like. Next slide, please. Here's where I started digging, that little embankment. And this was interesting. I'm there 2 minutes, and an insulator rolls out of the ground. I'm digging underneath, and it was up above me. Well, it's all caked with mud, and I took my gloves and went like this. And I saw the claws of a Harlow, a Mint 206.5. I'm thinking, these things must be everywhere. It took me 5 years to find another one. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, there's a bunch of rocks on this property, round rocks. I'm almost certain this was a crusher. And what they were doing was they were taking bottles like this, crushing them, and there was a section there where you had glass that was about a 1/4 inch square that they must have been throwing into the furnace. Now, there were sections there where there were white sand, which is not native to the area. The reason for this plant in the first place is you have the sand there, you have the coal from the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area, and you had the transportation network at the time, the railroad. Now, when I was digging there too, I found this interesting item. This has to be a mixing rake, mixing hoe. All the edges are flattened, and it probably had a wooden handle on it, but I imagine this was in the batch house and just mixed the different ingredients back and forth. It's one of the few metal artifacts I found. So I had to bring that to show you. All right. Pardon?
It's rusted, so it leaves amber streaks.
No, I think that was just the iron in the local sands. And a little aside, too. If anybody's been to northeastern Pennsylvania, between Hawley and Honesdale, I think there are 4, 5, 6 different glass factories. The most famous of one is the Dorflinger Works. Very fine lead crystal. There's a German immigrant who founded it. His tableware was in the White House for, I don't know, a dozen different presidencies. Very, very high quality. His ingredients came from Europe. And that was the best of the best there. There is still a museum in White's Mills, Pennsylvania, which is halfway between Hawley and Honesdale. All right, next slide. Oh, there's our presenter there. Now, I was there with one of my photographers. Those of you who know me know I dig with Steve Bobb and Ken Willick. Well, Ken Willick, unbeknownst to me, decided, I'm going to take a picture of him. All right? So the next thing I hear is, hey, 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 turn around. Next slide. Oh, this is what the dinosaur eggs, we call them, which we're finding in that spot. There should be another picture that shows them closer. These are all postal style. And the next picture should be, that's me. What Ken's going, hey, hey, hey.
Look at the color of his beard.
Dougie Williams used to call me Sonic, the hedgehog. So, because once I started digging, you just see these little plumes of dirt rooster tailing out of the hole. Yep. Now, these are some of the glass slag pieces I found there. And as you can see, there's peacock blue, there's cobalts, there's ambers, beautiful teals, and clearish amethyst. So where are the insulators made in these colors? They're not there. I've never seen one. The only purple Hawley I saw was radiated. So they're obviously making other things there. The type of things they may have been making is wire reinforced glass that I found there. Bottles. There are a lot of ink wells. This might account for your cobalt glass that was there. They're very generic, but obviously they were making much more than insulators. I don't know if these were all insulator related items, whether they were made as an added line, or whether they were actually Cullet, because they were definitely buying Cullet too. one thing that proves that out is this is a pharmacy bottle from Hawley, PA, made by Whitehall Tatum. So we know they weren't making Whitehall Tatum products there. All right, next slide. And there's my photographer, also not as gray as today. Ken's holding a toll that he had just dug up. All right, next one. Let's see what we have. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about their products. One thing I found there, there's about 15 or 20 of them broken, were Floys. I'm pretty sure that's who made them. Because in 1903 to 1907, when this factory existed, that type of power insulator was brand new to the industry. There's no way they were breaking them for Cullet. I'm pretty sure they made them. I also found a lot of these broken. Mortars, very clear glass. I'm almost certain that these weren't made there. They were probably brought from one of the other factories there and used as Cullet. It's much easier to melt glass that's already been made than it is taking the individual ingredients and melting them. Now, I got into their privy and dug it out. And it's funny, I found 2 tolls in there, a bushel of these broken, and one good one, a whiskey flask.
It's hot in the winter.
Yep. All right, now, I also found a couple mandrels for threading the insulators, and I found a bunch of these Western Union pins. And I wondered if they were marketing their insulators on these already, because they're all in one very small area, or whether they put them on there themselves because they had issues with the threading. If you look in the case, you can see some pretty bizarre, let's see, where's the real good one? This one right here. Look at the threading of that. How would you put that on a pin? I think they jammed them on themselves to sell them. That would explain a lot. Or maybe they didn't, who knows? Let's see. Now, in their Cullet pile, get out of the light there, I found 2-hole insulators that weren't Hawley made. There's this no-name pony with the concave skirt. When I showed this to Ora Beery 25 years ago, he said, that's a Beaver Falls product. It's got the Y in the pinhole. Maybe it is. But it was in their Cullet pile, as was this 3-date ER. Now, the other items in the Cullet pile, which are pretty remarkable, we have half of an ear jumbo. What is that doing there? We also have a few Western Union items, one in a beautiful yellow-green, real dark yellow-green. Oh, these were used on the Erie's Wyoming Valley Division. I know that from having dug along it, and that goes right into the town of Hawley. Another oddball piece, the CD-120 KCGW. Again, what's that doing there? This is the top of a Columbia. And also I brought one other insulator. Here's the Floyd that I was talking about earlier, but this is a good one from my collection, just to show people what it looks like. And this is probably the connection to the Hawley helmets. I found a broken 259 Oakman helmet. So that's probably where that comes from. Now, one other thing about this plant, they were remelting everything. There's no doubt about it. Maybe this is what accounts for all the junk that we find in Hawley glass. Maybe it's because of the tumbler they were using. The tumbling stones would actually fragment, and that got put into the glass batch as well. But here's a couple examples of insulators that were being remelted. Here's a toll. This one, I don't know what it is. And these things weren't everywhere. These are pretty much the only pieces I found that were actually in clumps of slag. And the only solid pour I found at the whole factory. It's a beehive. And I found one half of it one year, the next half the following year. Luckily, I kept the first half. I also have a bunch of Hawleys that were in the dump. I think they were either warming pours or they just didn't pass muster. They threw them out the back window. What you end up with is insulators like this that are squashed, crackled, full of stuff along the fracture lines. So I thought they were interesting enough to take them. This is pretty much all I found, though. It's not like this place was crawling with insulators. They remelted everything. Now, some of the other oddities. I get a kick out of these, I call them the drunk ones. They're all lopsided. Here's a super tall helmet, super short helmet, beehives that are tilted both ways. Get a load of this keg. I don't know if you can see it with all the indentations in it. This one is slumped. And then, of course, other oddities. You have this super stretched out one. The amber, beautiful amber. You have jade, which are actually as varied as they get color-wise. That's about as green as I've ever seen in a Hawley, right there. Again, if they're making insulators out of all these colors, what do they make out of that other glass? They sure didn't throw it away. Now, other than that, let's talk about the Harlows. We know Morton Harlow started with porcelain Harlows, and they worked. They were successful. Porcelain is mechanically stronger than glass. Next slide, please. There's both styles. They're right here. I think, buoyed by the success of those, he decided, let's make them out of glass. We know he started off at Sterling down in New Jersey. Wasn't there long. Was there for less than a year. Then he moved his operation to Hawley. Next slide, please. That's the back side of the porcelain. Next one. All right, here are your three basic small Harlows. You have the P1, which probably stands for prototype 1. You have the 12P1 and the 14P1. Next slide. All right, there's the profile of the domes. P1, 12P1, and 14P1. I've only ever seen one 14P1. Morton he might have been the machinist, and I'll bet he was. He's the guy making the molds. He's looking for something that's going to work the best, something that's going to make him rich. All right, from there he went to, next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, that just shows it. This is the P1 and the 14P1, which are the closest, the only difference being the thickness of those ears, or fingers, whatever you want to call them. Next slide, please. All right, here are the P2s and the P2Ss. The P2 is what I call the squash ear variant. The P2S has stretched out fingers on top. Next slide, please. All right, you can see it's a dramatic difference in the shape of those domes. Next slide, please. And the one other thing that's different about those, you can actually see through the fingers on the P2S. You can physically see through it, whereas all the other styles, that's not the case. They would physically bind, whereas on this one, it looks like they might actually slip through. One of the things I wondered about with this style, because I found absolutely no P2S pieces in Hawley. Did the S stand for Sterling? Maybe it did. All right, let's see. What do we have next? Is this where I have them all together? Nope, that shows the other side. Again, look at the angle of those ears. Okay? It's the, oh, I know, this is actually, these are both P2s. But what I wanted to show you here is, look at the difference in the curvature of those on the back. The one on the left is a 7 mold. The one on the right is a 3 mold. That one on the right is the very first one that I found. Now, on the small Harlows, I found molds 1 through 6 pieces of them. On the next size, up to 8 molds. So they were making a lot of molds. All right, let's look at them all together. There they are. See anything different? You're looking at, next slide, Harlow's number 3E. And I have those here. Let me get them all out for you, and I'll put them in the display case.
So small claws on the left, big claws on the right, and that thing in the middle.
There it is.
That's from the dump.
Yes.
What CD is that? None. 206.7.
shape too.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, everybody, there they are. The P1 series. Thank you. The P2 series, prototype 2, and Harlow's number 3E. With the help of Gus Stafford, we put it together. It's about 60% there. There's 5 pieces. I found skirt pieces from probably no less than 20 units, and I found up to 4 mold numbers. That is the only example that exists. So I've decided for a Pennsylvania National, I'd bring out the number 3E for everybody to see. I hope you enjoyed my talk. If there's any questions, I'll answer them now. Yes?
They seem to be in very good shape, so there wasn't a lot of quantity, like say at the Hemingway dump, but
No,
they
very
don't
little.
have the cracks and the chips, and you didn't glue them together. And
Oh, I glued them. There's some epoxy resin, like on this one, the 14P1. That's the only one I've ever seen. This one I did purchase, the P2S. This one I purchased. But as far as the numbers of Harlows there, in collectible condition, maybe a dozen. That's it. They were remelting, even those. By the fact that you have all those 2 crackled ones there, I'm sure that's what they did. Now, I didn't touch much on the helmets, but they were also very limited quantities. The only thing found there in any quantity was the CD-145. Ken Willick and I found a pile of them, and the picture was shown earlier, of the postal-style beehives. This is one of them. And we joked about it. We said they're buried here like dinosaur eggs. They must have been end of production, and they were just dumped. And then you found regular beehives, backwards S, regular S, broken all over the place, especially in the Cullet pile. And that Cullet pile never got deeper than 4 feet. That's it. I'm convinced they were hauling away Cullet, they were hauling away ash, and using it as ballast somewhere, maybe along the railroad tracks, or as fill, no less. Any other questions? Yes?
How wide of an area did you dig?
Oh,
Can you repeat the question so that other people can hear it?
Yeah.
Afterwards?
How wide an area did I dig? Well, let me first say that the property was small. It's only a couple acres. With the hand shovel, I will bet you I dug 1.5 acres. But you're talking over 20 years.
30 years.
Yes, Bob?
What's the mold number on the left claw?
I don't know. It looks like a P1 to me.
Okay.
I've not seen it in person, but I'll bet you any money it's a P1 right here. And I'd say that would have been the most successful design, the beefiness of the fingers on top. I think that's it. I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
I was under the impression that mold had not been found, whatever mold number.
If you get me an impression,
I don't know who has it.
yeah, I don't either. If I had seen it, I would know. And I'll tell you this, every Harlow that I've seen, if it has the insignia on the back, that insulator has a mold number. It's the ones that don't have the insignia with the Hawley EPA USA that don't have the mold numbers of those that I've seen. So that's yet to be determined. I have also heard that there was a 206.5 without an inner skirt. That's only been rumored because I've never seen it. It may be that it's just one that it didn't form. I don't know. But other than that, there's nothing else I know of from this factory. It was only there for 4 years, folks. Yes, Bill?
You know what stuff Ray got?
Pardon?
What stuff Ray found there?
I don't know what Ray found. I'm sure he found insulators. But apparently it wasn't enough to keep his interest because he really wasn't on bad terms with the landowner. It's just that there seemed to be some kind of miscommunication between them, in my opinion. It wasn't bad enough that he said I couldn't go, so it couldn't have been that bad. But I'm assuming that Ray actually dug a big area. in the time he was there. He had gutted what I considered what was the middle of that plant. But when I started finding pieces, I redug what he did to make sure he had gotten deep enough, because I wasn't convinced he had.
When did you start finding pieces of the middle one?
It was early on. And I found them on the back of the property when we had the picture of where I said the first one came from. That's where the majority of the Harlow pieces came from. All the pieces of, and by the way, Ken Willick nicknamed it the Power Claw when I found it. But I found pieces of those, and quite a few of them. I found the 14P1, I found the 1P2, and most of those pieces came from there. Otherwise, they came from the Cullet pile to be remelted. Yes? I don't know what Ray got out of there. So I was hoping he'd be here. I was going to say, hey, Ray, what'd you find? But he didn't come back all those years I was digging that I was aware of, because at one point the landowner said, you're the only person I let on this property. Don't even call me. After about 6 episodes of him checking on me, and he came there. And I told him I would treat it like it was my own land. And after about the 6th visit, he said, don't even call me. He said, you're welcome here anytime. Just leave it the way you're leaving it now. And you know, you would kind of laugh if you saw what I did. Because as I started marching across the property, I dig up a lot of brick from these buildings. And from the maps I saw, there are 3 buildings. They look like they're 40 by 40 maybe, somewhere thereabouts, all in a parallel line. And there was a lot of brick on this property. So I always threw it out of the hole as I was digging. When I decided it was time to quit, I'd build myself a wall out of brick and backfill. That way I knew where I stopped the time before. Put a couple marker sticks. And one other funny story I'll tell you. I was there during hunting season. And this part of Pennsylvania is a lot of deer hunters. And I'm out there, it's squint-eyed darkness, and I'm just finishing up, and here comes a hunter down the mountain towards me. And he's talking, and I said to him, so do you have any luck? And he said to me, no, nothing. And we're talking. I said, well, you know, it's getting dark. I got to finish up. And he then looks at me and says, would you mind answering me a question? I said, no, not at all. What's on your mind? He said, would you mind telling me where I am? and I said, where do you think you are? And he told me, I said, you're not there. So where do you have to go? And he told me, I'm thinking, boy, that's miles away. He had gotten up and over the top of the mountain, got lost, came down on the wrong side of the mountain. So I said, well, hop in, I'll take you back. And when I took him back to his hunting camp, his buddies were already outside firing the rifle in the air as a homing beacon, the 3 shots in the air. So that's it, folks. Oh, yes, one more question?
The trees, how did you dig under trees or cut the trees down?
I dug under trees. Yes, I did. Carefully. So.
Is the owner still the owner?
The owner is no longer with us. And I was asked by his wife not to divulge the location of it. She doesn't want people there that have no business being there, she said. So I will absolutely honor that. Besides, I'm sure there's still stuff, there has to be, that I missed. But it's not going to be anything major. At least that's my story.
Let me have the mic.
Yep. Yes, Steve?
Was that plant destroyed or just shut down?
No, it just got shut down, and somewhere after that, they tore it down. I don't know who tore it down, but the buildings are gone.
I know some glass plants have fires and things
Nope,
like that.
nope, that wasn't the problem. And as you can see, I have a glass-covered brick there. They must have had issues with that. And there's a concrete or something plug, fire brick plug. Steve was talking about that. That might be a plug from the furnace. To get the glass out, they'd had to have some kind of plug, and I found bunches of them in there. So I don't know what else it could be. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed.
Hey,
Yes?
hold up that brick over there where you...
Okay, the big brick,
That piece is pretty big.
totally encased in glass. I found about a half dozen of them, so they must have had a tank puncture or something and collapse. Yes? Yep. Hand tools. Give you an idea just how much I used to dig. I got my first shovel at Sears. Every 2 years when it wore out, I'd go get a new one for nothing. And I'm not kidding you. The metal would actually, through metal fatigue, crack right down the middle usually. And the last time I went for a free shovel, the guy looked at me. Again, he recognized me, I'm sure. He goes, are you a contractor? I said, nah, I just plant a lot of shrubs.
All right, let me have it here.
Okay,
Hey, how about a round of applause for Jeff?
thanks.
I can't think of a more appropriate time to present an annual award. We just looked at pictures of Jeff as a young man, and as a young man, he was digging holes and finding insulators. Larry Veneziano established a gift for the Lynn Hawley Award, which is to be presented to a young collector in the hobby to keep them motivated and to carry on the very legacy that we all enjoy. As the award, it is an H&H Mini Jumbo, and at this time what I would like to do is turn the microphone over to the NIA Awards Chair, Ken Willick, to present that award.
Welcome, everybody. Everybody having a good time? Yeah. Of course, there's insulators here, right? Okay. On behalf of the show hosts and the NIA, I would like to present the Lon C. Hawley Award to a young and enthusiastic collector, somebody who's newly interested in insulators, trying to get his friends to collect, just being enthusiastic, like we were when I was his age. And I would like to ask Lincoln Roll to please come up. Lincoln here. Congratulate you. First of all, I'd like to present you with the Lon C. Hawley Award. This is on behalf of Larry Veneziano.
Hey, kid, get in the turn around.
All right.
Tell us something about it. Give us some information about what you're doing.
There we go. Hang on.
What's that? What is it? My name's Lincoln Rell. I'm from Bellefontaine, Ohio. And I first got interested when we were rototilling our garden, and I found a piece of it, a piece of an insulator. And I didn't really do anything for a couple years until I started walking along our train track, and then I started finding pieces of them, and then my mom used one as a decoration, and my Spanish teacher saw it in the background of a picture and asked if I knew what it was, and then she showed me the NIA.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, folks.
All right, two quick announcements. It's 2:35 right now. We will close the hall at 1600, 4 p.m. And 4 p.m.
I'll bring the
At
camera
4 p.m.
over
we will
and you just
open up the
narrate.
cash bar outside the
Just real
door
quick.
so that you can
Try to
get
beat
an
this
adult
rush of people
beverage before
with the
you
camera.
need to sit through our NIA meeting. We will also have some salty snacks out there on the tables to encourage you to buy more alcohol so I don't have to pay a fee. All right, last point. I think everybody enjoyed lunch day. We had 60 members of our crew go through lunch. Tomorrow is fried chicken and pulled pork. However, some confusion over whether or not
just
to
want me to
tip the
talk about the
hotel
insulators
will
quick?
include the service charge in
Do you want me to talk about the
lunch
slag
hour.
too or
I'll
not?
get close.
So you
So the
pay
people
the
that can hear
exact
us right
price
now,
and you have already
when I
tipped them.
post this
All right,
video,
so we
couldn't
will
see any of
tomorrow's
this
a
stuff
big day
from back
for
there.
raffles. Buy raffle
So
tickets.
we'll just a
We'll
quick
start
line at the
raffling
top
at 10
what they are, and then I'll just go
tomorrow,
over the
an hour
table
after
real
the
quick.
show
Just point out the
Okay.
big things.
Thank you.
Got it.
Stands back up before they get spun right.
Well, he wants to take some more pictures here. So,
Yeah, okay, you're in charge.
okay, I'll put him back up.
Jeff,
Yes.
your piece may make the cover.
Cool.
That is a very cool find.
Gus and I both.
Oh, nice job.
Thank you. It's about 60% there. Most of the front is there. I finished it 2 days ago.
That was great, Joe.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
So how long have you been working on the reconstruction?
6 weeks. And I'm going to show you, this is pretty interesting. These ears are exactly as they were.
Let me get a picture of you. Right. Mm-hmm. You got the tips, right?
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Killer piece.
Hold still.
Okay.
Amazing. I guess I better get a perspective on it.
Anybody who wants?
Pretty amazing, I'll tell you.
It's like it had too many steroids.
That's something, the power claw, as per Ken.
Now does that,
Okay, now,
what's on the back?
the back is a 2 mold.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, this is glass, like this.
Oh, wow.
This is glass like this. So it was Hawley PA USA, the number 2 mold, and Harlow's patents on the front. This is broken out. Now, this claw was reconstructed, but this is kind of funny. If you notice here, there's a line that goes like this, all the way around like this. Well, that was in the mold. It is now, if you look at that shadow right here, it slipped into the resin and is inside the body of the insulator. But it was the whole back of that claw.
Oh, that's perfect.
So there's no mistaking how wide the claw was. There might be a little difference, because I didn't have the very front of it. So what I did is I basically just went by what I had here.
Sure.
Gus helped me with that, and looked at the other Harlows and how they were constructed. So there wasn't a whole lot of guesswork involved. But this,
So did you put word out there for any contributions for information regarding anybody else's finds or anything like that?
no. This is all strictly on.
Ray didn't volunteer any
No.
anything on it?
But here you can see just how much plastic is here. But this section right in here is the back of the claw that slipped into the resin. You can't tell, but see, there you can see a little bit of the shadow there. See it? It's right there. But this is all glass. These claws are correct. This whole front is correct. This part is correct. It's just the back half of that insulator that had to be reconstructed. It didn't take a whole lot of guesswork because of how much was here. The only thing I'm missing, so if anybody sees it, I am missing the pony that is a 3-line. This is a 3-line right here. Okay? But I'm missing the one that in the book says the word sterling is blotted out on the back. So if anybody finds one, give me a call. I'd love to have it.
What happened to the insulator? For everybody that's going to watch it, can you just talk about the top real quick?
Sure.
And then I will-
Okay. Here are some of the underpores and misshapen ones. Real tall, short, wobbling both ways. This one is pretty interesting. This has a huge bubble in it, and if you look at it, it's totally misshapen in through here. It's amazing it made it through. The same holds true for that one. This one's real squatty. This one is super tall, and this one is actually in use in Chicago. I got that from Josh Dorndorf. Look at the bubble in this one. You've got amber. As blue as they get, you have a jade one, another super ambery one. This one has gigantic, I should have had base lighting for it. Look at the cotton balls in that thing. I mean, that's just enormous.
That's cool.
Okay?
That should be at the front right
Now, as for the Harlows, P1, 12P1, 14P1, P2, and P2S. The P2, I think we saw that already. You can see through the P2S's ears. I can't help but wonder if the S stands for Sterling as opposed to Hawley because I found no pieces of those. I found 6 molds of these, mold numbers of those, 8 of these. This one is a number 7. So,
You can tell how big it was supposed to be based on the letter.
as far as green goes, that's about as green as they get.
Pretty amazing.
Right there. You've got your 164s, one with green, your 160s, your 162s.
Stick this one back, and then I'll take
Okay.
a picture of it in its
Okay.
in situ, wherever you
It's pretty cool too. The Power Claw has amber in it, and it shows up beautifully.
Just spectacular.
Now,
So if you had to guess on the power piece, what,
Yeah.
experimental and just never went into
yeah,
any kind
number 3E, 3, experimental. P1, prototype 1. P2, prototype 2, and number 3E. They're your Harlows.
And the number 3 written out is so cool.
It's big.
So maybe that was the last, being that it wasn't a prototype.
It could be. Yeah, it could be the last of the last. He wanted that design to work. It's just that the ears or the fingers on top were not big enough. Okay, here are the different pony styles. We've got amber, we've got milk glass, we've got super light greens. The jades are absolutely phenomenal with base lighting. Here's another one with deformed threading. Here are your kegs in the various colors. Now,
Too cool.
Yeah.
on the 260s or 59 260s, look at the milk in that thing. How if we do it like this? Does that show the milk better?
Both did. I think just taking an insulator out and putting it there shows it the best.
Okay, let's do that. Followed by this one, which I think is the coolest with the milk. It's got major damage in the back, but the milkiness is just outstanding from the front. The pointy pinhole. Okay, now we have tolls in the bottom. Again, there's not a lot of color variation in them. Here's probably the bluest one. And they're mostly like that or milky. The same held true for your kegs. Oh, here's a 3-line embossing pony. A lot of dome glass. There's one with a neat black polywog in it. You find them with black impurities.
Hard to find.
I have more green ones in the front, and let's take a look at some of the hair lips here, because they are pretty interesting too. Oh, one thing I didn't point out, this one has a 3/4 inch pinhole. Was that an accident, or do they have a special order for a smaller pinhole? I don't know. Here's another wobbler in a Harlow. Okay, now the hair lips are pretty interesting in their own right. There's all kinds of hair lips with these.
Oh yeah, those get
I've got a couple I like those.
They're pretty interesting when you see them. Okay. Another one, huge hair lip, but on the back side, which is why I left it down here.
That snowball example too, man. I've seen them where they just come right to the surface.
Yes.
You know, it just,
And I think it's just glass that didn't properly melt. That's all it is. Now, coming over here, we have what I call the super twisted embossing. They are pretty interesting when you find them. Let's see, what else? Just, yes.
turn around and take your picture by
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not very good at the photographer being ready when
All right.
the subject is.
I'm ready when you are. Okay, now let's go through the rest of this. Where's my photographer? All right. Cullet pile items. Those were in the cullet pile to be remelted. Here is the solid pour, the only one I found at Hawley in all my years of digging there.
What's that on the outside of the one to the left of the bottle on the back row there?
Oh, that's just the incrustations from the cullet pile. I think it's lime. I think it's other materials that are going to be remelted.
Wow.
What a piece.
How heavy is that?
It's an insulator.
Incredible.
And you can see pretty much all the styles are represented. Now, of the pieces in the cullet pile, you've got Brookfield. You've got this beautiful yellow-green Brookfield. You have a KCGW. You have the Oakman, half an Oakman ear jumbo. You have...
You have 3 Emmingers.
No, not quite. You have a 104 Pennyquick. And of course, I said the 3-date ER and this 102 that has the wind dome. It's the concave skirt, unembossed, it looks like an unembossed patented, but it has a Y in the pinhole, which was kind of unique to your Paisley products. And Orabiri was convinced this is from Paisley, or Beaver Falls. These are the only 2 insulators that came out of their hole, out of the Cullet pile, that weren't Hawley insulators. Now, these are the other insulators that were in the process of being remelted. There's a toll, and this one I'm not sure what it was, but it was a reject of some type, probably a beehive. Here you can see the threading. Okay. Here's a pour also. Oh, and here's a chunk of an ERW. Skirt piece of an ERW. No mistaking it. You would find stretched out glass. I found a bunch of these in there, and I don't know if they were selling the insulators already on the pins or if they were jamming the bad threaded ones onto these pins. Now, let me show you one.
It would take that time, huh? I guess it would, right?
Yep, check out the threading on that. What do you do with a piece like that? And it's all boogered up.
Can you thread?
You put that one in the light?
That wouldn't thread on?
No, not easily.
Put that
Pardon?
one in the light.
In the light?
Yep.
Okay. And let's put it next to this one. Hawley had issues with some of their threading. Yeah, I found about 15 to 18 Floys.
But look at the high quality of that.
Well, this is sure. I'll bet this is a big money item for them. And I found, I want to say, 15 to 18 broken ones of these. And for 1907, you're going to be putting this up. This would be the state of the art for electrical engineering at that time. And I think Hawley was a company they contracted because of all the broken ones I found. They're not going to be taking these and making them into Cullet at that era, or that point in time. I think they made them there.
No snow, no. I mean,
Nope.
Look at that.
But the color is consistent for that era, for Hawley glass. Green aqua to aqua. I mean, there's very little variation. The other piece I found was the 259 Oakman. This I only found pieces of, and I brought a good example to show you. This is probably the prototype for Hawley's helmet. That's what I would guess. Now, going further along.
They were doing knockoffs even back there.
Of course. This is just a warming pour for a mandrel, I think. This being one of the mandrels. There wasn't a lot of metal found there. The other piece was this mixing hoe. And as you can see, it has holes in it. All the sides are flattened. Look at how they're flattened. Every side. So they were dragging this back and forth, probably along the fire brick, to mix the ingredients. That's what I believe was being done here. Now, these bottles and everything else are from the Cullet pile. And I believe they were making some of these. If you look first at the pieces of Cullet, we've got peacock blue, we've got cobalt blue, we have amber, we have dark teal, beautiful Hawley blue, and just little interesting things like this. I thought it was interesting enough that I took it. Great, weird color like this. Okay. Oh, and how about this one? I didn't show this at the show, but this will look good on close-up. It's the top of a Hutchinson soda, complete with the metal ring in the top. The other thing I found there, and I didn't say this in the talk, I found a whole bunch of these with their bale wires. These are the stoppers, especially the Scranton PA ones, that go on these bottles right here. And I found one small section of the property where I had all these broken off blob tops with the metal in a pile. They were remelting those bottles. That's what they were doing. Oh, I also found this marble. I will bet you this is somebody horsing around at the factory and they made a marble. It's a whimsy. But you can see all sizes of bottles. There's some absolutely stunning colors. You know, the beautiful ambers in them. Teals, that's a super dark olive green. And maybe what they were doing was they were making some of these bottles. I found so many broken ink wells, I will bet you they made these ink wells there. It would explain the cobalt blue batches of glass that I found. So, and some of the bottles, you know, there's not much to them, but look at the color. Just strange color. And that's not dirt, it's like a super light olive. This Hawley druggist bottle is definitely Cullet, because on the bottom it's made by Whitehall Tatum. Okay? I don't think you could read it, but it's very slight, WUT company. Then you had Hutchinson sodas, you have squat sodas, you have tall blob tops, you have pony blob tops, Bromo seltzer bottles. This had to be Cullet from a perfume bottle. These are perfume bottles. Who knows, maybe they made this kind of thing too. I'm sure all the glass companies there were making whatever they could to make ends meet. And then here's a real neat piece of clear glass. Look at the bubbles in that. This one has got great striations in it. You don't even need a backlight to see that. And there's all the typical little stones in there and debris that you find in so many Hawley insulators. Here is a piece of window glass reinforced with chicken wire. They might have been making this. I don't know what these things were. I'm sure the bottle people could probably tell me. But that looks to me like something they made at the factory. And this thing, don't know. Maybe it came off of the gathering pipe. This one, just a weird color, kind of a citrony green. I love the striations of this. This is purple. This is Hawley blue. This, I don't know what it was for. Maybe it was a plug for the furnace. When it's time that the glass is ready to come out, you knock these out comes your glass. Maybe that was it, I don't know. That's just speculation. There's a brick covered with glass. If there was some kind of rupture in the tank as the glass is made.
How did they heat their furnace?
It was coal. It's definitely coal. And I love the color of this. I don't know if you got a picture of this one. Love the color of that thing. That's from my desk. Imagine an insulator made in that. I did find the occasional bottle top or canning jar top. I might have made them there. Who knows? When I got to the privy, I found 2 tolls in there when I dug it out. It was a 2-seater, by the way. And I found dozens of these broken and 1 good one, all amber whiskey flasks. And last but not least, I found a lot of these broken in one section. And I say a lot, maybe a bushel of them. I don't think Hawley made these. I believe this came from probably one of the other glass factories there. They were rejects, and Hawley got them, and they were remelting them, turning them into insulator glass. So I think that pretty much covers it all, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and I've been saving this for decades. This was decades in the making.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing it. Thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
From my limited knowledge,